Kia ora whānau. Before we jump into today's episode, I just want to apologize. We did forget to turn the fan off this episode, so it is in the background. Also, just to let you know, there is a lot of profanity in this episode. Keep that in mind. Enjoy.
And we back. Hey, this ain't no intro.
This is the intro.
Yeah, this is the intro.
This is the intro.
It's the entree. Hit that intro with Kanye. I sound like Andre. Tryna turn my baby mama to my fiance. She like music, she from Houston, like Auntie Beyonce. Man, my daughter couldn't have a better mother if she ever.
Kia ora whānau.
Hi guys.
How are we all doing today?
Welcome back to another episode.
So, thank you so much for coming back and being with us as always. Welcome to our new listeners. Welcome back to our old listeners. New or old, we love you. Thank you so much for being here with us today. We're so grateful to have your time. We're so grateful to have your attention.
Yeah, we really appreciate you coming back. Listen, we had different episodes planned for this week to the one that we're actually doing.
But I very sincerely commit to knowing thyself, knowing myself, and being good to my mental health. And I did not realize when we planned the original episode out that I picked that it was going to anger me and create friction, and I don't desire that, so we didn't do mine. And then hers that she picked out we're still going to get to. But we're very current affairs based. And this is a current affairs episode.
Yeah. Well, we are working news.
So, facts. So, in that vein, I want to say some things first and get them out of the way real quick. We said the thank yous already, but the views and opinions expressed in this episode are mine. They do not belong to my wife. They do not belong to other people that work with us or are affiliated with us. They are how I feel based on my experiences. I'm going to say them with my whole entire chest and mean them. And if you don't like them, that's okay. But they're still how I feel. And with anything that I say, I will explain why I feel that way. So,
well, yeah, you just prefaced that quite interesting. So now I'm like, how's this episode gonna go?
It's gonna go the way it goes. We're always honest. They always go the way they go.
So we all,
you scared?
Even me and them, don't know what the fuck going on. But yeah,
listen, it is what it is. So let's just start with that base question. Let's jump right into it. Is racism ever okay?
No. Listen, it's
no. Go ahead, answer. Go ahead. You go first.
Listen, for me, it's defining racism. And the definition of racism that I have...
That needs to be the first part of the conversation. So what is racism? It's an institutional construct. What does that mean? Racism is a system built that takes away or disenfranchises one group and promotes the success of another group down. So how does racism work? It's not just about the things that we say. It's about not being able to get jobs. It's about not having access to good education and healthcare and things like that. So when we say, can a person of color be racist towards white people?
The answer is no.
The answer is no, because we don't have the system behind us in place to be racism. We can't be racist. Right, exactly. We can't prevent white people from getting jobs. We can't prevent them from getting good educations. The jokes that we tell about them or the slanders or slurs that we may use towards them can't hurt them outside of their feelings, if that happens.
It's not like historical trauma that they...
Right.
That we're like bringing up.
But in the reverse, because of this system that's been in place for generations, those things can hurt us. If a white person tells a joke about you going to another drink up, that can keep you from getting a job. If a white person tells a joke about how you're always late, that can keep you from getting a job. So just to establish that first, people of color cannot be racist towards white people or other people of color. But everyone can be a bigot, right?
Yeah.
Everyone can discriminate and be prejudiced towards other people, right? So if the question is racism ever okay? Then the answer is no. Because racism is using a system of power built by Europeans to affect people of color. Right? Kin is now, right? That established. So, do we both agree that racism is never okay based on what racism is?
Yeah, fuck yeah, it's not okay.
Right? So then our next question becomes, is it ever okay to be prejudiced?
Is it ever okay to be prejudiced?
Towards another group of people.
This is really interesting because I feel like people from my work may listen to my podcast, and I don't necessarily want to put.
So don't. So
but listen, is prejudice ever okay? No, and yes at the same time.
You riding the fence. Safe. Go ahead. Play it safe. It's okay. Be political. Go ahead.
You're so ridiculous. Nah, listen, I can be prejudiced towards something. Mm-hmm. Prejudiced towards my people. Mm-hmm. Prejudiced towards people of color. Mm-hmm. Like, as in, I will always be actively working in favor of them. Mm-hmm. So when it comes to certain things, my answer is obviously, if there's two options, it's going to be the one that best suits my people, like, kind of thing.
That's fair. But that's not prejudice. That's not prejudice. Looking out for yourself, protecting your people is not prejudiced. So you see, listen, so if we come back into this construct of racism in this system, right? Okay? Are there white people who aren't racist? Yes. But do all of them benefit from racism? Yes. Okay? So what are we saying? What's the point? What does that mean? It means that even if you are not, as a white person, actively prejudiced towards people of color, you still benefit from this system that was built to uplift and enhance white people, right? Does it mean that you don't suffer hardship and that you don't experience negative things? No, it doesn't mean that at all. You still have hardships. What it means is you don't have any of those hardships because you're white, right? So, is prejudice ever okay? You've given your answer. My answer, fuck that. Unequivocally, yes. There are situations where prejudice is okay. And I'm going to give you my examples here. So first, right, to lead into that, we're talking about colonization. We're talking about imperialism, and we're talking about indigenous affairs, right? And so if we're talking about those things, so I have lived multiple places in the Pacific. I represent multiple places in the Pacific. I am a child and a loyal servant of the Kingdom of Hawaii. I am a long-time liver, resident, and lover of Aotearoa, right? And I've lived in Tonga as well, right? So it doesn't matter what the country is or what the conversation is. I am on the side of the indigenous people. Doesn't matter if they're right or wrong. I am always on the side of the indigenous people.
And that's exactly what I meant when I said.
Oh, I didn't know because you were playing it safe, so you were afraid to say what you meant.
No, I did say what I meant.
Okay, that was me coming for you just now.
Yeah, I know that was you coming for me anyway.
But anyway, okay, but moving forward, so prime example of that, right? So there was just this issue that happened on Facebook Live, and Poly Twitter is all talking about it, where there was a Maori woman who was a little tipsy. She was in her cups, drinking her Codys, and there were Pacifica people in the comments antagonizing her and egging her on, and she ended up going on a racist tirade about coconuts and calling everyone coconuts and things like that. And the reason I understand how sensitive a thing that is here in Aotearoa is because in the Caribbean, because I'm Cuban also, Afro-Latino, a coconut is something completely different. You know what I mean? Like everybody from the Caribbean is a coconut, but it's not predominantly racist term.
Yeah.
So the first time I called our girls, I called Mahuakia a coconut, you were upset. You were super, super upset and offended, and you were not okay with it because the word had different connotations and meaning for you than it did for me. Just like monkey. We had the monkey conversation earlier around the same time too, because monkey means something completely different for me. That's not a big deal here. Yeah,
like Stephen Adams got pulled up for that when he was calling one of his colleagues his teammates are monkey, but that's something that's just thrown around here.
Right now,
but when you say it to someone who's black in your team, that's right.
So, but he didn't mean it that way.
Yeah,
and he didn't know it that way. So the monkey and coconut conversation, funny, is very much in that right in that vein. We're not talking about pina coladas and getting caught in the rain. So right, but again, so I've lived Aotearoa, Hawaii, Tonga, Australia, right? And so, there was everybody after the Facebook video was posted to Twitter of her calling people fucking coconuts and talking about how they come here and they shit on the Maori and Everybody jumped out the window to condemn her and all this other shit, and it's not okay, and she needs to learn her history and culture, and I get all of that. I do, right? Here's what I'm going to say. Is prejudice ever okay? Sometimes. Do I understand where she was coming from? Yes. Was there a better way she could have addressed it or gone about it? Yes. Is that going to happen while you're drinking? No. So for us to put the expectation on her that when she was in her cups that she was going to handle that perfectly and exquisitely is stupid. One.
I think the key thing from what she was ranting about was something she said was, you in terms of coconuts, Polynesians, come over to Aotearoa and
Maori
think this
land,
is your
Maori
land.
hard. Letting you know.
And she went on, she'd be like, what was she saying? Te rangatira. Like she was like essentially saying, you think that this is your land, you don't really give us the kind of acknowledgement
and respect that we deserve. Continue.
This is exactly like when I watched this, being called coconut is one thing, but I also understand
where she's coming from
because
I made that point, you made that point, and someone else in the thread made that point and said she's making some valid points, right? And here's the thing, here's my basis for the argument. So I have so of all the countries, I've lived all over the world, and I've lived in 4 countries in the Pacific. Do you know who I've never ever experienced racism from? Maori. You firsthand question for you. Who is my biggest circle in Aotearoa? Maori. Who do I ride for the hardest?
Maori.
I put Maori before everyone in Aotearoa. Sincerely, with no issue, right? I've never ever experienced any racism from Maori. But I have constantly seen with my own eyes and been around people of every culture that try and constantly shit on Maori and look down on Maori. So I'm not mad at her for her anger, and I'm not mad at her for losing her shit. Was she wrong for the way she delivered? Yes. But it doesn't take away from the validity of the things that she had to say.
Because, let's be honest, every Pacific Islander knows at least someone in their life that kind of has these kind of views towards Maori. And it's really sad because when that happened, and we were talking about it, and we were like, there are Pacific Islanders that think like that. And it's because...
Many. It's not a minority. It's not a small group. It's a lot of people.
But if you kind of try and think of where they got these views from, they're not inherently our views.
They were... nature versus nature, learn things.
Yeah.
And I understand that, but at some point, even if the shit we do and practice and say was passed down and learned, we still have to take responsibility for it.
Fact.
Because those become our actions at some point. And that's the point of the conversation for me. Regardless of where it was learned, you practice it. So it's not okay to shit on people and then get mad when they defend and protect themselves. And you don't have any say in how a person chooses to defend and protect themselves. I had to learn. Because this is a conversation we have all the time. Because there are a ton of fucking brown people in Aotearoa and people of color who are racist towards everyone who's not them. And I'll say it. I'll call it out. Fuck, I'm not going to be shy about it. One of the most racist groups in Aotearoa, based on my personal experiences, are Indians. And I've been thinking about this for ages because there are so many Indians. It's not even like that they were born here. They come here from their country, from India, or Fiji, and they do the same thing in Australia, and then they treat the country like it's their country, and everyone else who's not from the country is a piece of shit. And I think I've talked about that on the cast. My last day in Australia, my last day at my job there, I worked for the government, and there was an Indian man, and he was trying to guilt trip me into some shit, and I was just frustrated, and I was over it. And he was like, so you can't get this from me today? You want my wife to die? And I just didn't give a fuck, because it was my last day, and I was like, yep. And he lost it, and he exploded. And he was like, what's your name? And you only have to give your first name, but I gave first and last. And he was like, you people come here from your country? Meanwhile, his Indian accent is so thick, I can taste New Delhi through the phone. And he's like, you people come here, and you get on the dole, and you steal our money. And he went super hard with the racism in it, and that wasn't an isolated installation or view for him. So there are a lot of people. I won't focus on only Indians, because there's a lot of people that do it, but there are a lot of people that come to Aotearoa from everywhere, and they display their racism towards Maori. It's first and most prevalently and strongest. And you and I have had the discussion many times about how I don't believe it's okay, and it's going to sound super racist and discriminatory, but fuck it, I'm saying it with my chest, for Indian people and a lot of Asian people to work for WINS and IRD and a lot of government-based programs, because they have a lot of racism towards Maori and Pacifica people, and they are very unsympathetic and uncompassionate in situations, and they do not help, they hinder, and they treat it like it's their money, and they go out of their way to not help or give a fuck about it.
I had a colleague once, he was Indian, and his views were just so, like, off the charts, and it wasn't even like he was just broadly racist, he was specifically Maori racist. And it was quite interesting, because this was my first interaction with an Indian in a workplace, and just how he was open about it, but he was quietly it was just like under the radar kind of racist, but
because he was adamant in his feelings, but he didn't want to get work issues for it. Like, even in Australia, I had to distance myself from one of my very close friends when the topic came to indigenous people, because he is Middle Eastern, and there's a ton of Lebos and Middle Eastern people in Australia, and he was super hardcore racist towards Aboriginals. He borderline hated them, and he has so many academic reasons for it. They have so many trust funds and grants, and they get so much money and opportunity that other people don't get, and they're still alcoholics and this and that, and it's really shitty.
Which that has been debunked a million times.
And it's really shitty, all of these things that they get that other people don't have access to. And this is the shit that people say about Maori. They say this about Aboriginal and Maori. When your iwi has funds and grants put in place for you to get an education that you wouldn't have access to otherwise, money that rightfully belongs to you and your people. Oh, well, the government, fuck you. The government doesn't do shit for the Maori. The government consistently takes away from the Maori, and we can have that conversation too, because we know firsthand how Maori get the least amount of money possible for their land, and it gets purchased mostly by the government or has to be sold to other people who aren't Maori for shitty prices, and then the value of the land becomes raised and higher instantly as soon as it belongs to someone who's not Maori. So we need to talk about the systemic racism that is deeply prevalent in Aotearoa before we shit on any Maori people for being angry at other people in their country, no matter who it is.
I think there's a very general and just nationwide misconception that Maori aren't hardworking people, and I guess maybe that's a lot of Indians, because when you think of it, like, Indians, you know, there are a lot of dairy owners, and they kind of...
But that shit makes me angry, and I'm not comfortable with that. Do we go to dairies?
No.
We don't go to dairies anymore, because the conversation that we have consistently, I am not willing, and we are not willing to spend money and put money into people's communities who would not and will not do the same for us, right? And this is the conversation, this is the colonization part of the conversation, right? Because I'm very hard line. So there's a difference, right? When a lot of people of color, again, when we were talking about the Indians, when they come to Aotearoa and they want harder, stricter laws on immigration they mean that for everybody but them. Okay? I mean that for everybody, including me. I am okay with it being harder for people to come and live and be a part of Aotearoa. Because the highest number and rate of our homelessness in this country is for Maori people. The highest rate of unemployment and discrimination is for Maori people. So yeah, Maori hard all fucking day. And even you and I bump heads on this, because when we have the refugee conversation, you say we can do both. And as a developed country, we have a responsibility to help refugees. And my point of view is always, when all of the Maori have homes, then we can help other people. So, you know, we diverge a little bit there. But
yeah, I just...
So for me, this is another basis to this, right? Like I said, to preface this, I'm always going to be in favor of indigenous people, whether they're right or wrong, when it comes to matters around their home country. Something we were talking about recently, if you remember, is Japan and Japanese imperialism. And I don't talk about it much online because it's very controversial, but I fully 100% support Japanese imperialism. And people are like, no, this is fucked up, this is dangerous, this is racist, right? Here's the thing. As a loyal servant of Hawaii, yeah? As a son of the Kingdom of Hawaii, Japan, I never have an issue with their imperialism, and here's why. Because the Nippon, the Japanese people, are the indigenous people of Japan. Japan never wanted to open its borders, right? It was forced to by America at the point of a gun with their navy, just like they did to Hawaii. And then they still chose the Japanese people and went into World War II on the side of protecting their country from foreign invaders, right? I don't have an issue with any Japanese person in Japan that doesn't want other people from other races and cultures in their country. You know why? Because they're in their fucking country. It's their home. You have a right to say who you don't want in your fucking home. And it wouldn't be an issue if we had people that came to countries that didn't belong to them lovingly and respectfully, and respected the culture and the people and helped develop it and share that love. But you have a lot of people culturally that mistake kindness for weakness, and they come into countries that accept them with open arms and open minds and loves, and then they shit on the people there, and they shit on the culture, and they try and indirectly gentrify and colonize, and then they get upset when people don't want them. Fuck that. So I don't have an issue with Japanese racism as long as it's happening in Japan.
Yeah. I think one thing I did want to touch on this episode was the Sir Bob Jones thing that we were talking about.
Tell me. Go ahead. Tell them. Let them know. Inform the people.
So I'm not sure how many people were aware or are aware of who Sir Bob Jones is, or I won't call him Sir because...
Bob Jones. Fuck Bob Jones.
Yeah. Bob. We'll just call him Bob.
Bob sucked my whole ass dick. Sorry. Okay.
Bob. Yeah, so he wrote... He said it was a satire piece, but he wrote like an article called Gratitude Day, in which he wanted to swap out Waitangi Day for what he called Gratitude Day, in which Maori essentially
are thankful to white people, because this is
and like he went so far to be like, oh, serve them breakfast in bed, like they should be groveling, and then
but he really meant that shit, and he really believed that shit.
Yes, but he said it was satire. That doesn't sound like that. That sounds like racism.
But so, and this is the view that a lot of white people in Pakeha hold in America and Australia and
every place that's colonized,
right? And you have a lot of colonized people of color that hold this belief too, that we should be thankful to white people regardless of thankful to white people regardless of the atrocities committed to our people, because they civilized us and they gave us faith and religion and improved our culture and brought technology to us, and we would have been savages in mud huts had they not.
In huts, like,
right. And so that's the view he was expressing, and that's the view a lot of people express, right? But my prime example that I love again is Japan. Because before any of these English savages came, who didn't fucking take baths or wash their asses and were dying spreading and dying from diseases based around sanitation, Japanese, even at the lowest level, were bathing daily and were some of the most sophisticated warriors in the world, and have very advanced culture and historical writings that is intact until this day. Some of the most advanced architects in their building to this day, passing down that knowledge. So it's bullshit to say that we, and again, look at the way the land suffers because of colonization. But when you take it back to indigenous roots and methods that white people try and popularize,
indigenous agriculture, and
it's things that they tried to destroy and take away and put no stock in.
I mean, just
because
look
they
at
knew better.
Australia and the fires that the indigenous people of the land
knew how to prevent and keep in control for generations.
And they were like, no, we live with fire. Fire is a part of this place.
You just have to know how to manage it properly.
But because they've stolen their land and not kept in place
the practices that were in play, it's come back to bite them.
So what I was actually back to the Bob. Anyway, so this Renee, Renee is her name. Once he wrote that article, Renee is a Maori woman
who called him out on it.
Called him out and made a petition to have his knighthood removed, in which 90,000 plus people have signed it.
And then he tried to sue her for defamation of character.
Yeah, so that just happened this last week. He's took her to court for defamation, in which now he's dropped the case.
Because on top of taking her to court for defamation, he created false things about himself and then tried to say that they came from her, like in the States, when white people write graffiti and cracker and shit on their own cars and then try to say it was Black Lives Matter people and stuff like that. He tried to pull an okie doke and create harmful things about himself that he said came from her, and then they were proved in court. She proved first that she didn't do this and it was fabricated by him, and then he dropped the case.
But it's really interesting because what was brought up was they kind of analyzed pretty much his whole life, in which all his articles that he's written and stuff like that
have been in that vein.
And it's been like 5 decades of just racist views towards Maori. And it just, in my head, I was thinking, well, how is it he's a known racist? Like, it's been known that he's a racist, and you still knight him. And it's just, that's the kind of institution.
And this is the conversation we're having. It's okay for indigenous people to not want people in their country. It's not okay for people who come and colonize the countries of indigenous people and the people who benefit from that colonization to want to deny other people access to a country that is not their own, that they have stolen, in which they are consistently trying to eliminate the indigenous people. We have, in the past 3 years, 4 years, we have seen so many things in the media about the outrage of Pakeha and white people at Maori affairs. They're so angry that there's a Maori-only prison. Why do they need their own prison?
What about oh my god, when there was those pest trees in Auckland? So these are non-native trees. They're literally pest trees in which
that are invasive and destructive to the environment.
And there's like 300 of them, right? So they were gonna remove these trees.
The local government was going to remove the trees
and then plant
indigenous trees.
But like far more than the 300. It was like, I think maybe like
they weren't just going to balance it out. They were going to make up and heal.
Yeah.
And the white people rose up out of the woodworks with petitions and all types of arguments and debates and protests to stop the trees from being removed. And a point that my wife very aptly made was because for them, the trees were a representation of them. And so that to remove the trees was seen like removing them, especially to replace them with indigenous trees that were native to the environment.
But it's just hilarious because these same people who are like, oh no, but this is why you're removing trees, it's for the environment, are the same people that, so Kauri trees are native trees, right? And there's currently in the Waitakere Ranges Cody dieback disease. So these huge, I don't know if you've ever seen Cody trees, but they're huge. They've been there for years and years and years.
Generations.
They're now dying off because it's called a Cody dieback disease, and they spread by foot, like people who
walking and carrying with
spreading.
you. Yeah.
So a lot of the tracks were closed in order to contain the Cody dieback disease. But the outrage from white people, like, why are you closing these tracks? These are our tracks that we can walk on.
We should not be denied access, and this is
and
again,
like,
this is again the nature of the conversation. And it doesn't matter if we're talking about Maori. It doesn't matter if we're talking about black people. It doesn't matter if we're talking about Kanaka. People have no respect for the sovereignty of indigenous people, of disenfranchised people, but they very adamantly and vehemently want access to the culture when it suits and benefits them. It's okay to sell Maori items and to promote Maori tattoo and the haka as long as we don't have to be around any Maori. You know what I mean? And it's the same shit. We love black culture and black music, and they use the word nigga, but we don't want to have to deal with black people because they're less than. Like, and I got upset, like, was it like a week or two ago? And I was very angry, and I got myself into a funk because I was angry, because I was like, nobody gives a fuck about black people. Nobody gives a fuck about Maori. Yeah. Nobody gives a fuck about Native Hawaiians. And it's very tiring when you are a part of and represent these cultures. It's I say all the time, it's very hurtful, and it fucking sucks to be half caste and to be afakasi, because the amount of times that I've had to choose which of my cultures I was going to be okay with and stand beside when they were fucking hating and shitting on each other is draining. It sucks. It fucking sucks to have to figure out how to defend both of your people when they're shitting on each other. It's not fun. It's really not. And so this conversation is very personal for me. And I don't have to think about who to defend or how to defend them when it comes to this, because I'm always going to be Maori hard. I'm always going to defend the Maori first. I'm always going to defend Kanaka first. Always. And so again, do I disagree with her delivery? Yes. She could have given it different. She could have worded it differently.
No, but that was from her heart.
That was from her heart. And so much of our culture is around drinking that no one should be able to fucking not understand being in your feelings when you're drinking. So I don't have it. I'm not angry at her. I'm not angry at her. And so many people jumped out the window and got on their soapboxes to immediately stand up and condemn her in their way of thinking. But we never talk about how much Maori gets shitted on by everybody who's not Maori. Even in my school, even when I used to work as a teacher, okay, I constantly had to be in student affairs in the center, because 95% of my class and my students were Maori, and all of the women who worked in the student affairs center were Pacifica, and they always looked after Pacifica people, and they never gave a fuck about Maori, and they would be offended to hear that, and that's okay. But all of my Maori students, and even Maori students who weren't in my class, used to constantly come to me about how they got no help and how nobody was looking out for them, and I had to go and talk to student affairs, and I had to go and talk to my fucking boss so that they could get the same treatment. I remember I bumped heads with somebody that I thought I was friends with. I thought we were like really good friends, but someone who was her real friend, because she was Samoan and the person was Samoan, had a son, and she put the son in my class, and I told her, I don't want him. He doesn't learn. He doesn't give a fuck about learning. He doesn't want to be here. And she got super angry and offended at me. Meanwhile, he was cutting class like every other fucking day, just to find out, oh, this is my friend's son, so this is why you're in the wrong. There was no acknowledgement about his negative behavior. Meanwhile, I had Maori students that were fucking, didn't have ways to get to school, and had all kinds of issues that were busting their ass and were getting no help because they weren't Samoan.
Yeah, it's definitely tough. not tough, but like.
So there is no shade of gray for me on this, and that's why I said I have no problem saying this with my whole chest, because until we start respecting indigenous people and their country, no matter what country we're talking about, then yeah, feel how the fuck you feel.
Yeah. I just want to give a shout out to, they probably don't listen to this podcast, but I just want to give a shout out to them anyway. Pania, she's a strong Maori woman. She was the one who was pretty much the voice and the leadership for the Iho Matao protests, and just, because that's her whenua, that's her land, and now we're getting positive results, I think, from it. Fletcher have officially moved off the land.
Based off of Maori hard work.
Exactly.
No one is going to take care of you if you don't take care of yourself.
Shout out to Renee, who took the defamation case, like, head on, and she...
Like a G. No flinching, and handled her shit, and defended and protected herself, and now backed him down.
And just... That's a huge win for Maori. And
Facts.
That's led by Maori women.
Facts.
Listen, when I think of all the Maori influential people that I know,
it's predominantly women. Yeah.
All of them are women. Shout out to Veronica.
Listen, I was even heard at the event that I went to, because there was a Maori man speaking about how we needed to be more accepting of white people, and I was like, just so disgruntled and upset.
And someone, listen, a woman called that out. A Maori woman called that out on the timeline. She was like, she was like saying, I can't remember what she was saying, but she was like, some things that are not part of our culture are like,
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. Like,
how we always talk about these things.
So this is what she said. She was saying, we always talk about how it's not part of our culture for women to speak at certain events on the marae. But how about we talk about what's not a part of our culture is the domestic violence against women in our culture that's prevalent. And she just went on, and I was just like,
about things that are very true and very important that don't get addressed, that get swept under the rug.
And it's like, these were never part of our culture. So let's talk about that. And I also want to give out a shout out to what's her name? Veronica? Is it Veronica? You saw her in the city? She does the weaving. She does classes. Yeah. She's really like putting in work.
Her and Sam.
Her and her husband. And I just, because this is, not a lot of people know, this is kind of like a lost art that she's really bringing back.
That's been passed down through her family, that she learned from her mother. That
the knowledge.
And she does classes and talks. We will get her information in her Twitter @ to share in the next episode. Shout out and deep love to all of my sisters in Australia, to my Hawke's Bay whānau.
To Makere, putting in work. In her work to really bring Maori.
And let's close this out with Mac. I want to take some time to celebrate my sister, okay, who has always been there for our family and for her nieces from day one, who is a very proud Maori woman that even in her youth, because she's younger than me, has fought consistently in every workplace she's been in to move forward Maori agenda and to make space for our people consistently, and I'm talking big, large scale government projects. She is forgot the fan on. It's too late now. It's been on the entire episode. But she has worked so hard her entire career to move forward and protect the culture and the legacy of the Maori people. And I am so proud to call her my whānau, my family, to have her as an aunt to our daughters, to have her as a representation that stands up in a part of our community. She was there at El Mato. She is so active, and even back, and for her this is generational, this is family, because her mother and her father start a Maori owned company that employs Maori and Pacifica people and teaches and educates them and grows them in our community in Aotearoa. So big love out to my sister Makere. We love and respect you so much. We are so thankful to have you as our family, and we are so proud of you and all that you do every single day.
And I think that's a great way to end this.
Yeah, with love. And that's where we stand.
for the background noise if there is.
Yeah, that's the only thing we'll apologize for, the fan. Fuck everything else. I stand where the fuck I stand. But we love you guys. Thank you for being here with us. Thank you again to our new listeners. Thank you to our old listeners for coming back. We hope you guys enjoyed the episode. And we are as always, at us. Say it with your chest. Twitter, IG, YouTube comments. If you feel differently, if you agree, let us know.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.